How often do oral arguments actually change your mind?
Almost never. It's sort of like when I used to watch basketball a lot, they'd talk about the big man in the paint, like you do your work early and you get low and then it's over. I mean, the guy, you can try to block Shaquille O'Neal 3 feet from the basket. Well, good luck with that. He did his work early and he got low and he received the pass. I think that the real work is in the briefs. The real work is what is in the written product.
Has there been times in your career when the legal questions you must resolve conflict with your Catholic faith? If so, how do you proceed?
No, not really. I think if something conflict that great, where I fundamentally think it's wrong, I would just go and do something else. I'm at a point, I said that early on, and I still believe that, but I have lived up to my oath. There are some things that conflict very strongly with my personal opinion, my policy preferences, and those were very, very hard, particularly early on. But I don't do a lot of hand-wringing in my opinions and tell people, oh, I'm really sad. That's not the role of a judge. I mean, you do your job and you go cry alone. But there have been some where... But there have been some that broke my heart, and that just were really, really, really hard. And I mean, there's sometimes, particularly early, you sit with the more seasoned members of the court and you explain to them what's wrong. And when I first became a judge in 1990, my colleague, Judge Silberman, Larry Silberman, sat down with me, and one of the things that's really interesting is no judge ever tells you how to do your job. The only people who tell you how to do your job are people who've never been judges. But anyway, he said to me, I'm just going to give you a little bit of advice, unsolicited advice. Before you sit on a case, ask yourself this question: what is my role in this case as a judge? Not as a citizen, not as a Catholic or anything. What is my role in this case as a judge? That is a hard one, because if you stay in that lane, there are some things that you as a citizen or you as a personal preference would want to come out a different way.
What is the most significant misconception you think the American public holds about the court or its role in democracy?
Boy, that could be a long list. I think that they think that we make policy. I think the media makes it sound as though you are just always going right to your personal preference. So if they think you're anti-abortion or something personally, they think that that's the way you always will come out. They think you're for this or for that. They think you become like a politician. And I think that's a problem. I think you're gonna jeopardize any faith in the legal institutions. And I think the media and the interest groups further that. And I give you an example of I know there's a football game this weekend, and Nebraska is playing Oklahoma, and. Oh, you all have one too, huh? So at any rate, let's say this weekend that, like if a referee makes a call that favors Notre Dame and Notre Dame wins, people would say, well, that was a fine referee. That's what you're supposed to do as a fan. But if the referee makes that very same call and it works against Notre Dame, oh my goodness, this guy can't even see. Come on. Anybody could have seen this exact same call. That's because we're fans. We're not acting as judges. We want a particular outcome. And so we look at the outcome, and that totally colors what we think the quality of the refereeing was. So if it's for us, that was excellent refereeing. If it was against us, horrible, absolutely horrible. The guy should give it up. But that's not what you can do when looking at cases. But that's precisely, read any article about sort of one of the big cases, and that's precisely what you have. It's like if the outcome is what I want it to be, excellent work. You know, another Marbury versus Madison. If it is against what you look, Dred Scott all over again. This is horrible. I mean, that's just the way it works. But I think that's wrong. I think if you go back and you look at some of the New York Times articles in the 30s and 40s on Supreme Court cases, the few that I've read are excellent because they summarize the case, they talk about the arguments, they summarize the holding, and then there may be a short paragraph on the implications. Now, put that side by side with what you would get today. So I think that that's problematic, and that sort of encourages these preconceptions about the court. That's all just personal preferences.
You really can't judge judges unless you know the materials that they're working with. You can't say, oh, this is a good decision and this was a good court simply because you like the result. It seems to you that the person who deserved to win won. That's not the business judges are in. We don't sit here to make the law, to decide who ought to win. We decide who wins under the law that the people have adopted. And very often, if you're a good judge, you don't really like the result you're reaching. You would rather that the other side had won. It seems to you a foolish law. But in this job, it's garbage in, garbage out. If it's a foolish law, you are bound by oath to produce a foolish result. Because it's not your job to decide what is foolish and what isn't. It's the job of the people across the street. So don't judge judges unless you really take the trouble to read the opinion and see what provisions of law were at issue and what they were trying to reconcile and whether they did an honest job of reconciling them and of interpreting the words of the law in a fair fashion. That's what counts. Unless that's what you want your judges to do, you have a judiciary that's not worth much. You have a judiciary that is just making the law instead of being faithful to what the people have decided. So that's my main advice. Be slow to judge judges unless you know what they're working with.